this case, we're looking to serve our community. So I want to thank you and let us continue in that vein and want the King to continue to serve. Bow our head. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing these people together. We thank you for the commitment and the passion that each and every one of us have for the children of this community. We ask that you be with us tonight and guide us to do their will and to do the will of the children and to keep them foremost in our thoughts. We thank you for our blessings and, again, the compassion and the commitment that this community has for its well-being. We ask that you be with those who were not as fortunate, those who could not be with us to share their thoughts. And again, guide us to be your disciples in everything that we do. In your name we pray. Amen. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just a very quick, not really quick, I don't want it to be quick because a lot of folks have gone through a lot of work for this, but January is School Board Appreciation Month. And we are very, very happy that we have some folks from our schools here tonight to make some presentations. But I want to say something first. It is an honor for me to get to serve with this school board. These 5 people up here, a lot of people don't know this, they don't take any compensation for what they do. And they haven't since before I came here as superintendent 4 years ago. And they do it because they love the community and they love the children that they represent. And I just appreciate the fact that I get to work with people with that attitude that always keep the children first. And it's a treat. They challenge me, they push me to make sure that we have the best school system that we can have. And they're great to work with, and we're lucky to have this type of school board here in Jacksonville. So during the month of January, if you get a chance, you see your school board members out, let them know how much you appreciate what they do. But let's give them a round of applause. And Ms. Hamilton, our principal at Kitty Stone, is here, and she would like to make some presentations.
Kelly mentioned about serving. We want to thank you so much on behalf of the teachers and the students at Kitty Stone for you guys serving us and all that you do for us. Can I Grace? The kids have some tokens of appreciation for you that the different grade levels done.
It's like caffeine.
chocolate. You
They know who's a diabetic up here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, that's cool. Thanks for all you do.
I'd like to thank our board members for everything they do for our school, for giving us a nice, safe environment, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that's from the 4th grade.
Each grade level made something. 4th grade made a book. You see there's posters displayed on the wall in here and in the lobby.
Oh,
That's awesome. Thank you very much. This is always when we get these cards and notes, it's always, January's always fun. So thank you guys for making it that way, very much.
And if you'll look up under the, they all wrote.
Signed all there. You may need this caffeine before the night's over. All right. So,
Ms. Hamilton, is that
That's
it?
all of our presentation.
Okay, all right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, students.
And we certainly appreciate the mayor and city council being here tonight. They always try to make it over for our January meeting for the Board Appreciation Month, and all the support that they give us, mayor and council members that are here, and Jared Simmons from the finance department. Appreciate you being here.
Just glad the fire department's not here. All right, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. Lisa, if you'll make note that all board members are present. And the first item is to approve the agenda. So I'll see that in advance. If you've had a chance to look over it, I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next is to approve the minutes of the December 9th, 2013 board meeting, which you'd have gotten ahead of time on email to review. Were there any additions or corrections to those minutes? Okay, hearing none, I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Next, we have sort of the recognition.
Yeah, we did that.
Okay, we have recognition of board member appreciation, which we just had before the meeting started. Next on the agenda is financial reports.
Mr. President, I have to present for you in a recommendation for approval our monthly financial statements for October 2013, our financial statements for November 2013, with a combined bank reconciliation at October 31 of $4,696,001.98, and the combined bank reconciliation at November 30, 2013, with a combined reconciled balance of $4,708,894.61. I would also ask for approval of the accounts payable check register accountability report for both October 2013 and November 2013. I make that in the form of a recommendation.
Okay, and again, this is information we've gotten ahead of time for your review. We have a recommendation. I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So, but I wanted to say something before. First, I want to welcome everybody here. I wish we had more chairs, and I apologize for that. I think we have every chair almost in the house here, and there is some room inside around the edge. If those of you in the doorway would like to, I hope that you'll come in, and so that you can hear. Dr. Campbell's about to make a presentation with some information. Some of it's review, some of it is been updated for this meeting. Before we go into the presentation, I did want to just cover a couple of things, just kind of housekeeping stuff. As you'll see, those of you who hopefully all have an agenda, we at every board meeting print at the bottom of the agenda the board's policy regarding public comments at board meetings, and that's something that generally, when we get to the public comment period, I'll read that out loud, even when there's nobody in the room, to sort of get everybody on the same page. And as it says in the comments, the purpose is because the board meeting is to conduct business, and we try to have public forums and things outside of this to receive comments and questions. However, since this is we felt like it was going to be hopefully a big crowd here tonight, and with the interest in this, we wanted to relax that tonight. If it's okay with you all. And normally we allow 10 minutes for that, and we want to allow a longer time. And so we checked with our board attorney to see sort of how do we do that? Can we just do it? He said, no, you need to sort of have a recommendation and vote on it to temporarily suspend that rule. And then, so what we'll do after Dr. Campbell finishes with his presentation is do that. And then we want to open the floor up for comments and questions from those who have not had a chance to maybe comment yet, or maybe you couldn't make one of the public meetings, or you have a new question or a new comment that maybe has not been aired yet. You know, we as I mentioned, we don't want to have to use the Mountain Dew. We've had lots of comments, and we still want to hear comments, but we could be here all night. And as those of you who know me know, I could talk all night. And so we don't want to do that. So I'd like for us to, if I can get agreement, I'd like for us maybe to hold that to, instead of a 10-minute period, a 30-minute period. this meeting, and that way we won't maybe go too long. And so I always like to not surprise anybody and say, oh, I can ahead of time. And so, you know, if we get, I'm gonna kind of look at my watch a couple of times, if we get close to 30 minutes, please don't be offended if I maybe have to wind it down and say we really need to sort of, you know, maybe move on to the next agenda item. So I just want to kind of, you know, give those sort of housekeeping things before we started so that there aren't any surprises. We also have asked, as we do with many of our meetings, asked Mr. Kingston to video this for those who couldn't get in the room or for those who couldn't be here tonight, so that we can post this on our website for any to see that maybe couldn't be here in the meeting. Okay. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Campbell.
All right. And what I'm going to do tonight, a lot of this information is just a review that has been covered in previous public meetings, but with a lot of the letters that were written to the paper, there were some concerns brought up, and hopefully I can address some of those comments in this presentation. So just want to remind everyone that our vision statement in our school system is that we have high standards, high expectations so that we can produce high achievers. And our mission statement, which I'm not going to read aloud, but that the most important thing is that we can provide a great learning environment for our students as far as dealing with the issues that we're dealing with tonight. So almost 2 years ago, the board commissioned 2 different architectural firms to do a facilities assessment on all of our campuses. And you know, it was obvious that there were issues with the Kiddystone campus. So we asked them to do an assessment and report to us. And we had the first of those meetings in March of 2012. And then we followed up a month later with a State of the Schools meeting where those presentations were also presented to the public. And they both presented several options that included renovating, building additions, constructing new elementary school, constructing a new middle school, and constructing a combination elementary middle school at different locations. So they presented us with a lot of options, a lot of things to think about at that time. Over a period of a year, the board then narrowed their focus as to what was our top priority. And they were equal, that we needed a new middle school and that we needed to address the situation at Kiddystone Elementary. They felt that both projects were equally important, but when we had to make a decision that we've got X number of dollars and there's not enough money to do both projects, they prioritized the Kiddystone campus because of the safety and security issues. We looked at several potential locations that were recommended and even looked at one as late as this past week that was suggested after the last public meeting on the 9th. And we checked those out and we narrowed it down to 2. The current campus and the city-owned property across from Jacksonville High School. Our funding situation hasn't changed. The city voted back in the spring to allocate approximately $4 million from their bond issue that they did for the public safety building. And then we went through the process to get rated, and we received an A+ rating on our credit just before Christmas. And hopefully sometime this week or next week, the bonds will be sold, and for the amount of money that the city has allocated to us for our debt repayment, and we'll know that amount once the bonds are sold, depending on what the rating is. It may be $7 million, it may be $7.5, it could be more, it could be less. It's totally dependent upon the bond market, but we're operating off a number of $11 million. We're trying to be conservative with that. We feel like there will be $11 million available for this project. So a couple of things I wanted to touch on this slide, that that amount of money is not going to change. We're not going to have less or more money dependent on which site is chosen. But depending on which site is chosen will depend on how we will use that money. If we do a renovation on this site, there will be demolition costs. There will be the cost of rental of portables, the purchase and rental of a modular storm shelter, purchase of canopy to connect portables to the main building, ramps, decking, fiber optic connectivity to portables from the main building, bells, intercoms, and that type of connectivity, fire alarms. And then some architect fees, because when you use portables, you can't just pull portables in and hook them up and put power and go. An architect has to draw a design, and it has to be approved by the State Building Commission, just like any new construction has to be approved by the State Building Commission, and it's inspected by the State Building Inspector, and you know, it's a very involved process. And there's nothing surprising about this, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that all those costs come out of that total amount of money that we have available for the total project. So as far as our architect, back in September, the board interviewed 4 different architectural firms to design the building for this project. In October, the board selected McKee and Associates to be the architect for this project. Part of the criteria that we used in selecting the architect was that the firm had to have experience in both doing renovations and new construction. McKee and Associates only deal with school projects. They are school architects. Now, they do some higher ed projects, but they have done both renovations and new construction all the way from Foley all the way up to Florence and everywhere in between. They have about 40 years experience in dealing with schools. So that was a big part of the decision, was the number of schools that they have done in different scenarios, both in renovation projects and in new construction. The architect fees are based on a percentage of the total project. So the estimates that we've gotten for a renovation and for a new project are very close to the same. So the architect won't make more money on one scenario over another. It's roughly a 6% fee that's charged, and that's what is done statewide. Now, that fee may be a little less or a little bit more, but generally 6% is that fee. Now, just wanted to remind you of the dates that we had public meetings where citizens have had the opportunity to address the board and hear information regarding these projects, starting all the way back in March 19th of 2012 and as late as January 9th a couple of weeks ago. So, and we also have attended and been a part of the ACE Quality of Life public meetings so we've been available for that, and different people, different members of the board, myself at different times. All right, some of the concerns that have been voiced in this process, that the decision for the location is being made in haste. We've been looking at it for almost 2 full years. The historical significance of the current campus. We're in total agreement that this campus has historical significance. This campus was one of the original campuses of the college when it came into existence. I think it moved from somewhere around the square up to here, and it stayed here until the time that it shifted, and parts of it stayed viable until they closed Forney Hall. But this campus is owned by JSU, and it does have historical significance to our town. Concerns that if the current campus is moved, the buildings will fall into disrepair. The board, the city, and JSU have all stated different interests in repurposing the campus if it is not used in the future as an elementary school. The board's talked about the potential of putting a middle school in the location, because you would be going from 7 or 8 grades down to 3 grades, and it makes things a lot more flexible. JSU has made some statements that they would move part of their operation here. And I don't want to speak for the city, but you know, there might be something that the city would want to use the campus for, if it were determined that was the best use, if it were available. So with that said, I feel like that addresses that concern. A question was brought up about transportation costs. We checked with CST that provides transportation for us, asked that very specific question, and we were told that there would be no changes in transportation costs due to a location change. That it would be less expensive to renovate than to build a new facility. In our original assessments, as well as most recently when we spoke with Mr. McKee, I asked him to give us an estimate on that, and with all of the added costs, and to bring this campus up to the same level or as good a level as we could bring it with renovations, by adding elevators, by enclosing the open motel type hallways, it would be very close to the same amount as building a new campus. So that was almost a wash. The students would not be able to walk to school due to a lack of sidewalks. That is true. At the new location, there are no sidewalks over there at this time. There are sidewalks here, but unfortunately, we've only got about 10 kids that are walking to school presently at Kittystone. We wouldn't be able to do the things up on the square, what things that they've done on the square, and that is absolutely true. However, with the police and fire moving on that end of town, the potential for field trips to the fire department would still be viable in that situation. There was one letter in the paper that stated that the decision is being influenced by home building contractors. I don't know where that could come from, I really don't, but I can assure you that the decision, whatever the decision is that is made, will be made in the best interest of the children. Now, the next point is that the proposed new site is not convenient to people on the north end of town. It is further away from people on the north end. But we do offer bus transportation to all points within our school district. We will send a bus to a bus stop within easy walking distance of pretty much any place within the district. The increased car traffic from the north end of town going through the square, I think would help the viability of the square. Because if you've got transportation people coming from the south end to this end, and they're not going to be coming here anymore, I think that could potentially be equalized by the people on the north end going to the south end. Make sense? Anyway, currently the people on the north end wouldn't necessarily come to the square. They would turn on Mountain or Francis to drop their kids off. Now they would, if we went with a different site, they would then be traveling through the square. So to address that concern, that particular concern, and that's just speculation, just like the other would be speculation that they wouldn't be there. The proposed new site is less than 3 miles from here. We polled the faculty at Kittystone. That's what the poll looked like, or the questions looked like, and we asked them, would they prefer to build on a new location and not be in portables, or not build on a new location and be in portables, and for about 2 years. And the result from that is about a little over 70% of the faculty said that they would rather go to the new site and not be in portables. That was what the faculty, well, and the faculty and staff. It was all employees at the school. just discussing student safety. If we do decide to stay here, some of the issues that could be dealt with would be that students who are in portables could be crossing the current parking lot in a city street in order to go to the office, library, and lunchroom. Right out here is one of the most viable locations for the portables on a level area that they could be tied to the ground. I can't think of the underpin, but tied to the ground, so they would be a lot more steady. That would be one of the best locations, but unfortunately, that is also College Street. And then the cars that park in the parking lot would have to be parked somewhere else. That's an issue that we've got to look at. The construction site would most likely be right here behind this building where the purple building sits, coming out of the lunchroom. So students, and then all of the pods would be demolished. All but one would be demolished. And then students coming from the portables and or the main building would then have to go around an active construction site to get to PE or to a playground in order to have that time period. That's just, that's an issue that would have to be addressed. One of the more serious issues that would have to be addressed, we had people from EMA come out last week to look over the campus, that if the portables were no longer available to be used as a safe place during severe weather, do we have the capabilities of getting them in a safe place? We looked at using this building as one of the areas, the pod that we didn't demolish as one of the areas, as well as even the potential of a modular storm shelter. We got the pricing on the modular storm shelter today. It was around $250,000 uninstalled. So that would be an added cost to the process. It would be putting students in bathrooms, that's where they go now, in bathrooms where there are no windows. And if you took an additional 500 kids out of portable classrooms and put them in those places, the students would have to be standing in the bathrooms, and it would be almost solid people. And that was based on the people that are experts in this, that would really be the only options unless you put in the 300-person modular storm shelter at $250,000. You could put 300 of them, of approximately 500 in there. Because see, the places that would be left are the safe places where the current students go that are in those buildings. Anybody on a second floor has to come down to a first floor. You can't leave people on a second floor during a tornado warning. So, and again, to complicate this, you're talking about pre-K, kindergarten, first grade, second grade age kids that don't react well in those type situations. Just to give you a little bit of background, in my previous position, I was over facilities in the county system where we went through a lot of construction, and we went through a lot of situations where there were portable classrooms, but in all but one, they were high schools. And there was a lot of land available in most of those situations where you could put them out in an area where they're not crossing a street, or where you could get from point A to point B without a major issue. The only time we dealt with an elementary school using portables was in a situation where the school burned down to the ground and there were no other options. That was all you could do to keep having school. So, and that was for over a year and a half. So I'm not trying to overemphasize this, but I'm speaking from experience that these are issues that are important. Now, the two locations, and I went over a lot of this in the public meeting, the current Kiddystone campus advantages that a new lunchroom and a gym wouldn't have to be constructed. We've got the historical and sentimental significance, the potential to maintain property values in the surrounding neighborhoods. It's close to the town square and near JSU, and there are sidewalks available. And the disadvantage, we talk about the cost, and I don't want to just keep going back to that, but even if we redid everything, you're still going to have some infrastructure issues in the future. And I'm talking about, as much as anything, the infrastructure underground, the water lines, the sewer lines. Years ago, we had an issue. We had to dig up the floor of one of the pods, and under there was an electrical line strapped to a sewer line. And everybody was a little bit taken aback. You know, this campus has been here for over 100 years. There's lots of lines. We had a pipe last year that burst under the sidewalk in front of the school. Nobody knew where, it was a pipe that went nowhere, but it burst and nobody could find a cutoff. We finally had to dig up the sidewalk, and the plumbers literally capped it while it was still spurting water. Nobody knows where the pipe went or where it came from. But you know, those are the kind of surprises that we would anticipate when we begin demolition on this campus. That's, again, none of it's insurmountable, but those are issues that we want to do. One of the things that concerns me most is the undersized classrooms in the third grade wing. No matter what we do, they're going to be the same size, and they're going to be too small. And I got some third grade teachers back there nodding their heads. Because the walls can't be moved because they're load-bearing walls, and no matter what we do, if we enclose the hallway and do all that, those classrooms are going to be undersized, and that's an issue moving forward. We can't say, okay, well, we'll move kindergarten over there. Kindergarten can't be on the second floor. First grade can't be on the second floor, nor can second grade, because that's against code. So that's an issue with, how many classrooms are on that building? 8? Okay. 8 classrooms that no matter what we did, we got an issue. The property of the campus is still owned by JSU, but we've had a lot of dialogue during this 2-year period with Dr. Meehan, and that is not an issue that we feel like is insurmountable. He has shown interest in having discussions of possibly allowing us a longer lease, or even possibly going to the Board of Trustees to request that the property be deeded to the city or to the school board. So it is an issue, but it's not something that is as big a problem as it once was. The traffic study did show that it takes longer to get off this campus, to clear this campus after school, than it would on the other one. Of course, we've got cars parked on the public streets, so we have people start parking at 1 o'clock out here on Spring Street and College Street. And I don't know that that wouldn't happen on another campus. I'm just saying that's an issue now if you're trying to maneuver around here. And then the safety and security issues that I've already talked about for a period of 2 years, just with the construction, not with the current layout of the campus. The potential location, the city-owned property across from the high school, the advantages, you could build a new campus without any disruption on the current campus. And all the money could be spent on the building, not on one-time costs that we wouldn't recoup at the end. It would be close to the high school, which would give us the option of sharing personnel, maintenance, and some of the facilities. Opportunities for some of the high school kids to come in and mentor or read to the elementary students. The traffic study was also favorable for this location. And let me clarify, the traffic study was favorable for both locations. There was not enough difference in the traffic study to say that that this is not as good a location, but it also gives us good data saying that that location, the traffic, according to that engineering firm, can handle that, those roads can handle that. And the direct connection to the Chief Ladiga Trail. The disadvantages, which some people consider an advantage, is that both schools would be on the other end of town. It would require additional travel time for some students. There aren't sidewalks in the area, and it would increase the traffic in the area on George Douthit Drive and James Hopkins Road. I've kind of talked about this already. I'm not going to go very deep into that. We're familiar with the traffic study. Now, one thing that I saw in one of the letters, they said we, should have used engineers that were familiar with Jacksonville. Skipper Engineering that did our traffic study does a tremendous amount of work for Jacksonville State University. I don't know if they've done work for the city or not. They have. So they are very familiar.
For Calhoun County.
Okay, for Calhoun County. But they are very familiar with our town. So this study, I believe, does have some credence. Oh, just a picture off Google Maps showing up there where the red dot is, that's where we are right now. And then the other part is where the high school is, which is across the street from the proposed location. And the additional drive time from here is 7 minutes. 2.6 miles if you go one way, 2.8 miles if you go the other way. And so we're looking at less than 3 miles difference between the two. But according to this, and of course this doesn't take into account traffic or red lights or whatever, but it typically, Google Maps is pretty good about telling you how long it's going to take to drive somewhere. So they estimate an additional 7 minutes. All right, so with that information, board members, do you have any questions or clarifications for me? Anything that I didn't cover?
I think it was good, but what were again, the number of I know that when the architect at the public meeting the other night, he mentioned, when he was talking about middle school versus elementary school on that Keystone campus, he was talking numbers of students. It was...
Right, currently we have almost 900 students on this campus. And the estimation for 3 grades would be in the 400 to 450 neighborhood. So you'll be cutting the, if you had a middle school here, you would be looking at 3 grades versus pre-K through 6, which is almost 8, well it is 8 different grade levels, even though pre-K is a smaller grade level.
Any other, before we get comments? Kelly, you want to?
Okay. Mr. President, I make a motion to suspend our rules to allow members of the audience to address the board with any new information or for clarification of any new information presented tonight.
Can we have a recommendation? I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. Motion is second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, comments? Yes.
Dr. Campbell and board members, I have a new question. And I'm a property owner here in town. I have a young son that goes to Keystone. I own a home here in Jacksonville. I've been here for a number of years. My question is this: the mission statement, I understand, is what's in the best interest of the children. But my question to you is, what crystal ball are you looking into to determine what children, what decade of children are we talking about? Are we talking about the present decade of children that are in Keystone, we're doing what's best interest for them? Are we talking about the next generation and decade of children that come along? How are they going to be benefited if we move this campus all the way down to the south end of town? I'd like to know, we're looking at David, are we looking at your crystal ball? Dr. Campbell, you got a crystal ball, you figured it out? Well, I'm wondering, if you're going to stick by the mission statement, I've seen you've written about it, you've talked about it, okay, I want you to now man up to it. Think about the next generation of kids, not just this generation that we're worried about in pre-K and K. And so I'm asking all of you to search your minds and your educational background and determine what's in the best interest of the city of Jacksonville, not just the children that are at Keystone now. Thank you.
I mean, I think I would speak to that and say that certainly we're thinking long-term with this. Kitty's been here a long time. This is a long-term decision, and the facility, whatever we do, needs to be something that can last for the ages and can serve our children and their well-being, both academically and health-wise, for a long time. So that certainly weighs on me and is a priority, and it's not just about today, it is about the future and what is the best long-term solution to what we face, here on this campus. And I'm, excited that we have the opportunity and the option to do something. We are going to be able to make it better, regardless. But it is a long-term, solution. Okay. And I'm not experienced at, but their hands were raised first, if you don't mind. We're going to do like classroom, and then we'll come right back to you.
Lady first.
But there won't be a test.
Something, Dr. Campbell, that you said that I think really should be looked at. You said $250,000, or was it $250,000, or was it more for a safe room kind of?
The estimate that we received from a company that we got just recently was $250,000
Okay.
prior to installation.
Okay.
Now, that is a modular
Got it.
building that could be used
Got it.
in a permanent solution. So, there is, in any building that we build, we're going to build a safe area
Okay.
for the amount of students that are anticipated
Right.
in that building,
Well,
even though in a
I have a very
renovation.
strong suggestion for you. Out of Italy, Texas, there's a company called monolithic.com. They build cement domes. There is a large Baptist church, I believe, in Birmingham. There's one in Dothan. They've built them along the Mississippi River for grain storage, whatever. It's a cement pad. You order a bladder to your specifications. You're undercover in 7 days with that thing, and it could be used. It's a great big dome. You know how if you take an egg and stand on the side, you can break it? You turn an egg or a teacup the other way and you can stand on it, same principle. And these are built in Texas. HGTV just recently did one about, I believe it was Ivan, it was called Eye of the Storm. They went to bed because nothing was happening. They got up the next morning and everything else was gone, and they suffered little to no damage. But that is the kind of a structure that it's extremely energy efficient, doesn't rot, and it requires little to no maintenance. That could easily be incorporated in a structure like this, and they can be very beautiful. So if you haven't looked at that, that is a strong, strong contender, and at a fraction of the cost.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Dr. Campbell, have you asked the people of Jacksonville, the majority of the people of Jacksonville, the taxpayers, what they want? Have you had a survey? You made some good points a while ago. It sounds great, and I'm all in favor of it, but have you asked the majority of the people who pay taxes what they want?
No, sir.
I think you should.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
The proposed cost for the new facility down near the high school, does that include the cost of modifying the surrounding roads to bring them up to spec to be able to handle the increased traffic flow?
Do you want me to answer that?
You go through the traffic study?
Yeah, the traffic study that we had completed said that the roads in the current condition that they are could handle the additional traffic.
I would challenge that very much.
Sure.
You're gonna need to widen Hopkins, and you're gonna need, and Douthit needs to be widened right now. Douthit is 9 feet narrower than Eagles Crest Boulevard, which goes into a development. Douthit is 18 inches narrower than the street on which I live, which is in the development. It's a back street, Cary Court. We talk about, we got signs, share the road with bicyclists. There's not enough room on Douthit for bicyclists and that. They added buses that would be coming down in addition to your funneling. When I saw in the presentation, you're funneling everybody down Douthit Road. Have you visited Douthit Road at 2:50 in the afternoon? It's a little chaotic. This is going to be adding more to it. So unless the cost of widening both Hopkins and Douthit are included in, then gentlemen and ladies, you have an incomplete proposal for the cost of new construction. And we're talking from Alexandria Highway. All right, people come in, going to be increased traffic off of Alexandria Highway onto Douthit. all righty? That carries a lot of traffic. You need to modify that intersection to put a protected turn lane in, so to reduce the prospects of traffic accidents. Douthit is gonna have to be widened all the way from 21 past Hopkins to where you hit the curb. And I would say anybody who does not consider that is woefully missing the boat. And you say, well, what's your qualification? Well, I'm not a civil engineer, but I have 2 engineering degrees. And I have done civil engineering stuff along the process, so I'm not totally ignorant of that. And I live out there, I see what the traffic is right now. And so unless road modifications are included in the cost, then you have an incomplete cost analysis of the project, and you're not ready to make a decision whether to put it there or remodel this location. I'm not opposing that location. I'm neutral in that, although I think it's going to be an imposition. But if the roads were brought up to where they could handle that kind of traffic, then okay, it would make it a lot easier. And also, get rid of the 4-way stop sign at Pointer and put in a traffic light with intelligent timing on the controls, and that could eliminate some of the bottlenecking. That could be done right now, for that matter, for the city, but people could think about that. But with that in mind, we have an incomplete proposal.
Based on, and I'm not a traffic engineer either, and that's why we, hired Skipper Engineering, and some in the room may have been present for that proposal. But, when they had, I can't remember what were the ratings, it was like A through F, I think, was it like grades?
No, numbers.
Numbers.
1 through 10.
But the, according to Skipper Engineering, George Douthit and James Hopkins had much more capacity even, than beyond with schools there. I know that's kind of hard to think about, but based on the traffic engineer that we relied upon, that's the data that we got back. Thinking longer term, we talked about long term earlier. For those who were at the public meeting the other night, what the architect we've hired, what he recommended was that the Kittystone campus is much more size-wise and conducive to a middle school environment. I mentioned that 400 student range. If that were to happen, then you take 6th, 7th, and 8th grade off of that into town, and they're on this campus, and all of those are car riders, and so they're going to be in cars as opposed to buses. As opposed to driving themselves to school. So that's a very large population of the student body and parents that will then be coming to this campus under that scenario, as opposed to that campus. I think the middle school discussion is a whole separate thing that we can talk about, but that will impact 400 students and parents and buses, and the buses that come with it.
Those costs, I still say costs still need to be considered, and then if you say do something different, then that can be subtracted. But to totally ignore it and say, well, they can handle it without any extra cost, I say, excuse me, but somebody is coming up short on the thinking process.
Well, I'm not a civil engineer either, but I have picked up kids from kindergarten all the way through 6th grade at Kittystone campus. 5 streets are closed, and so, it's kind of a bear if you want to get into the Methodist church. It's totally circled with stopped traffic for about an hour.
Be moving that to another location, unless the streets are direct.
Probably have access roads like around the high school. The traffic, the car rider people are actually on campus and not on the streets, the public streets. I think they're ready, Charles.
Yes, I have to get my wife first because I have to go home.
Understand.
And she's.
Well, I just wanted, I'm Mindy Poe, and I'm the vice chair of the school foundation, and I wanted to address what Mr. Duncan asked about, have we surveyed the parents? Well, the foundation, back in last January, commissioned a feasibility study with J.S. Smith Group. And one of the, I think we had 96 interviews, parents, grandparents, alumni, business people in the community, JSU people, all the stakeholders. And one of the questions in that feasibility study addressed the facilities at both the high school and the Kingston campus. And that document is a public document. It's here in the central office, right? So it's, anybody can look at it and read it, but if you will go and look at what the comments, it has every comment that was said by 94 people that were interviewed, and the rating of the facilities, and I just think it would be interesting for you to look. Overwhelming, what came back from that study was, we need a new school. And I'm not advocating where it goes, but there was no doubt about the need overwhelmingly. And I just think if you read the comments, it would help you kind of gauge that, you know, the heartbeat of a lot of the people that, you know, are in this environment continually, or engaged in it, or have a lot of stake in what's going on around here. So it's here on file, so you can read anything you want to.
And I was just, Joe's had his hand up for a while, I just didn't see it, so just wanted.
Thank you. I was just curious, I had a question about a third option, and whether y'all, I'm sure you considered it, it's a possibility of building a new elementary school on the parking lot of Kittystone, where the teachers would then park next to the FEMA building, and that way the kids could stay in the pods and there wouldn't be a need for portables. And then when the new building is built, then they could tear out the portables and use that for parking. And that way the gyms could be used, the cafeterias could be used, and it stays in the same location. Certainly there have to be upgrades on College Street and Spring Street, I understand that. But that possibility, I don't know that anybody's ever talked about building it on the parking lot.
Right, I guess the biggest concern would be if it would fit with the right-of-way of College Street where it is, or if you built it on the other side of College Street, crossing, you know, a city street to get to different things. You know, there's a potential of even closing College Street, you know, at the bottom of the hill. I don't know. The architects that did the original feasibility study, the two groups, gave us several options, but that was not one that they recommended in that study. But
And we, you know, we did ask them to look at every option that they felt, based on the footprint and the topography was feasible, you know, here, and that was not one of them. You know, we didn't, you know, we did ask them to look at all. We asked them to look at the small the small parcel of land that juts out from the parking lot out there. You know, they mainly looked at the parking lot area for portables originally. A lot of the some of the original architects we looked at this. Okay. And I don't know who's first. I think you were first. Yeah.
Am I first?
Yes.
My name is Paul Hathaway. I teach public administration at the university, and I think one of the things that has not been discussed is the intangible benefits. We can talk about money, but you cannot talk and put a price on the benefit of having a sense of community and what that does for the community development. And I will tell you, every time you move public buildings away from the center of the community dies or declines. And I think that while valid concerns on both sides, pros and cons, but one thing I think you severely missed and didn't even address was, what is this doing to the sense of community and the community development? Because if we're talking strategic and long-term, it's not just students. We've got to have families here. We've got to have businesses here. Otherwise, you have no students. We'll move to Weaver. We'll move to Anniston. We'll move to Piedmont. Citizens won't move to Jacksonville. They'll find Pleasant Valley and Calhoun County schools more appealing because we've lost a sense of community in Jacksonville. We you know, the square will be, you know, more deserted than it currently is. And this proposal of moving, you know, everything out and new is, I get that. It's nice to have new and improved. But I think they would be damaging in the strategic, and you can look at the community development literature. And when you move things away from the center of the city, that's when you start your decline. And I would argue that that is more strategic than, you haven't even addressed it. What happens when families don't move to Jacksonville? Piedmont's a wonderful school district. I could have moved there. Calhoun County Schools have wonderful schools. I could have moved there. I moved to Jacksonville because of a sense of community and what I envisioned. And I'm afraid that we will lose that.
Yes, sir.
It looks like everything, my question has kind of got shut out. Everything's been addressed, but thinking kind of, listening to all the presentations and all the questions, it's kind of stuck in my mind. Number one, it's for the kids. That's the number one priority. Okay. Are the kids going to be better educated in a new building out by the high school or in a refurbished Kitty Stone area here? I could say that part of it's not going to change. But the thing that has kind of bothered me in listening to the board's approach to this is probably about 97% for moving and about 30% for staying. So if this is a done deal, why are we wasting our time here? I mean, if y'all have already made your mind up that you're going to do this, you're going to vote for the new building out there, then we're kind of being kind of preaching to the choir, you know. And I guess I'm going to ask that question. You don't have to answer it, of course. What's y'all's decision? It sounds to me like you already made one.
Well, when we finish the public comments, we'll vote. And that's, we felt we were ready to do that after having spent 2 years gathering data.
Well, the 2 years, you know, a lot of us were not even aware. A lot of this stuff was not, you know, you have these meetings and you get about 3 lines in a paper or something, and if you don't happen to read that little point, you don't even know they're having a meeting. So, you know, I mean, I'm not saying you didn't have meetings, but maybe the public, and you can't vote on something like that. There's too much sentimentality going on. You know, you got to keep in the focus point of what's best for the students. In this school, no doubt, something's got to be done. But we need to think long and hard if we can achieve the same thing with no more money here and going over there. We need to really look at that. All these gentlemen talking about traffic. I live past the school, towards the river, and in the mornings, and you know, people, if you're not out there, you don't realize how much big traffic. That's a cutoff between 21 and going to Alexander. If somebody's going to go to Alexander, they don't drive downtown, they go through all the red lights, they cut across there. Concrete trucks, dirt trucks, you ought to see the amount of trucks that goes through there, right by the high school, 4-way stop. Drive over there as you're making a right-hand turn, and look at all the pancake effect of that road. It's beat all to pieces. And that's strictly because of heavy traffic, construction equipment going by the high school. So, you know, just if you're going to make, if you hadn't voted, you need to really search yourself deep and long for this. Because once you commit, you know, it's a done deal, and we're going to live with it for many, many years to come.
I hadn't even spoken yet. I'd just like to thank the board for recognizing that we need a new education facility for our K through 6. I'd like to thank the city for your support of that. And I'd like to thank all of our citizens for being here, whether you support this location or support another location. But what I would like to see is whatever decision the board makes, is there's been a lot of articles in the paper, pro and con, but let's come together as a community, which I've heard a lot about, being a community. And the greatest way you can show that we have a wonderful community is to support what your leaders recommend one way or the other after a decision's been made. And let's move forward beyond this. I really don't care which way they build it, because I've taken my kids to school and done all that, but I want our city to be recognized as a positive city, and I would like to see, once they've made a decision, for you to support that decision, and let's move forward in a positive manner as a citizen and as a community, and people will look at Jacksonville and say, that's the place I want to live. That's the place I want my kids to go to school. And then we'll grow as we're wanting to do. Thank you again for y'all's hard work. City, thank you for your support. That's all I have to say.
I teach 3rd grade. I'm in that motel that Dr. Campbell talked about, along with my friends that won't stand up and say anything. But I do want to say, until you come and you spend 10 years walking out in the frigid cold to go to the bathroom, my kids have to put on gloves, scarves. You know, a couple weeks ago when it was so cold, we have to walk outside to go everywhere. I had 20 students in my room this year. I had 24 last year. My room is about, I don't even know if it would be half. I'm teaching fractions, 2/3 of this room. And I have 20 desks in there, plus a reading center because that's important and that's what we do. I did have a nice little area with, you know, a rocking chair and a rug where my kids could sit on the floor and enjoy reading. That had to go away. I have too many desks. 3rd grade wing is not going to get bigger. We're going to stay where we are. Come spend a day with me. I would love for you to. Do it during this freezing weather or during the pouring down rain when we get drenched. They may close that wall in. My room is still going to be tiny. I have 3 children in this school. I should say, I have to be careful what I say, but looking at schools and schools I've visited, I love our location, but we need a new school. As a parent, if I was moving into a community and I came and visited, I'm sorry, I don't know that I would want my child on that campus right now. Not in 3rd grade, not what we're having to go through, and I don't think people understand that. I know I'm definitely not an engineer. I'm not looking at the road situation or any of that. You were talking about the interest of the kids and our students. I think you're looking at the interest of everything else other than the students because our kids need to be safe and they need to be enclosed. We don't have a school community because we're spread out from one end of the world to the other. Our teachers, I have teacher friends I never see because they're on the other end of the campus. That I don't think you realize until you've been where we are what they're going through. And I think our board's doing a fabulous job. Thank you for looking out for the interest of the teachers and the students.
I'd just like to ask, how many hours estimated would you say the board has been considering this over the last 2 years? Is there any way to put a time on that?
More than a few.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and as somebody who moved here, I moved to Calhoun County in 2000, chose to move to Jacksonville for the education system here in 2005, and I bought on the south end of town. So I kind of bring a lot of experience in why I chose where I chose to live and then why I chose the area I did. I see the future of Jacksonville not in the square. Unfortunately, it's history, and as someone who has a degree in history and has taught history, I respect it and want to preserve it. But the future of Jacksonville seems to me to have the expansion possibilities to the south. And so I don't know how we can quantify where the centers of the city will be in another 25 years or 50 years on either side of that argument. And so that would be one thing. As someone who moved here for the education system, somebody has 4 children in the system and a wife who works for the system, I just appreciate the hundreds, possibly thousands of hours that you all spend researching this, studying it. And one last question would be, what would we gain back from the temporary portables we would put on this location financially? Talk about the $11 million. What of that money could be recouped for our building in the future?
The only part of that I'm aware of, if we were to purchase the modular storm shelter, it could be used as part of the permanent project. But other than that, all that money is spent and gone when the project's over.
As a taxpayer, somebody that chose Jacksonville for this very reason, as someone who has 4 children, next year will have 4 children in the system, has 3 currently. I'm thankful that we've made the decision to at least have a new school building, and I rise in strong support of moving the system to a unified campus in a sense on the south end of town, because I believe that's the future of Jacksonville. And so I appreciate all the time you take.
Thank you.
Mr. Clue.
Well, I too thank you all for all the time that you've put in here. I know after being on several boards, I know what it's like to work on a project like this. I know how thankless it sometimes it is. But I do want to talk to you just a little bit. We've talked about safety and some of the things that we haven't brought up, and some of the things that have been brought up is the time that the children spend on the buses per day. I realize that it's only 3 miles, but you got stop after stop after stop after stop after stop, and it's less, and it's not 5 minutes, it's not 6 minutes, it's longer periods of time than that, and I wanted to bring that out. Another thing, if we're going to run school buses down George Dalford Drive, and we're going to run into the intersection, at the Walmart intersection down here, it has become the most dangerous intersection in Calhoun County, in my opinion. We've got a lot of places there where we see wrecks all the time. I work out by the hospital, and I see wrecks there all the time. I have patients coming in, oh, you should have seen the wreck that was at that turnoff. Okay, so I wonder, I'm concerned about that. Even if we drop and come back in through Frogtown and through the Mill Village and come back into town that way, that's another congested area. The congestion, I totally agree with the gentleman who stood up about the size of the streets there. To put more traffic on those streets, to watch in the morning times when you come. See, that's been, for the last 30 years, I've used James Hopkins Drive as the bypass. It's the bypass of Jacksonville. So you get all kinds of things. You get the construction folks, the grading folks, you get all sorts of cement trucks going down through there, lumber trucks, everything else in that area, so you're running into traffic. Let me move along a little bit. Once we move the safety complex into that area, and 2:15 in the afternoon, 2:30 in the afternoon, whatever time it is that everybody is getting out and going, all of a sudden we get a call for the fire department. The fire department comes out. There's another traffic problem that we're going to run into. So I look at that as far as the safety is concerned and traffic patterns. Again, I asked earlier about the demographic of the students in Jacksonville. I think the demographic of the students has to be looked at. Where do we have most of the students? In North Oak, East Side? Are they down in this gentleman's area? Where are they? Where are our young children? Where are our high school children? We know where they're going to go. But when we start talking about our young children in the elementary school, we have to be considerate of that and considerate of parents and grandparents that have to sit in line and pick up children, you know, as we've talked about before. Yes, that's a problem. But with looking at Kiddystone, those things can be addressed as we start moving along. I understand that the property values of town and the way that the city is going is not really the board's concern, it's the children, and I understand that. But we have to consider, what is the city center going to be like? What's the square going to be like? What is the north part of town? What are the property values in the north part of town when we can consider having all of our schools in one area? As we start talking about safety, okay, we're talking about temporaries. Temporaries, and the reason we talk about temporaries for safety is that if there's a storm, then we got a problem. Big word there is if, but it happens, all right? But if we have all of our children within a 2-block radius out at the high school and there's a storm, then we got a problem too. Even though we're going to have storm shelter, because I was glad to hear you guys say that the last time, that we're going to have storm shelter, but still, we still have that problem as far as safety is concerned. After the meeting the other night, I spoke with the architect, and David was in on the conversation, and I asked him about, well, what about a phased-in project where we don't use temporaries, where we don't use as many temporaries? Why not phase in 3 pods and then 3 more pods, or however many pods we're going to use? I assume that this pod will stay, all right? And but then again, you know, we start talking about this, we can look at renovation. We can look at a lot of renovation. We can look at Forney Hall as renovation for the board offices. We can look at Eastwood School as renovation for pre-K, kindergarten. We can look at it for an after-school computer area, or for our 21st century classrooms for later in the evening for children who have to stay late because of the fact that their parents work late and they're latchkey children. You know, we have to think about all of the children that we have to serve, and the demographic is an important part. So as we start to look at this, you know, we might have to negotiate a little bit more with Jacksonville State University as to how we do a long-term lease for this property or a long-term lease for the Eastwood property, or what we could do as far as getting those things going. Now, last time we talked about this, it was mentioned that there would be probably a $2 to $3 million savings in doing this campus as compared to the new campus, all right? But all of a sudden, this is evaporated, it's equal. I don't know where that came from. The big heat wave coming through here, and the evaporation factors is huge. But the point is, if there is $2 or $3 million to look at, some of that for temporaries, and we can't recover any money from the temporaries, why not the phased-in project where we could use the school for children? We could do instead of temporaries, do a remodeling of Eastwood School and use that for some of the children, and then we wouldn't have to use any temporaries. Or we could use half the temporaries because we're doing a phased-in project. That doesn't cost any more. You're going to have to do certain amounts. It costs a little bit more for grading and demolition, possibly, if you only do part of the grading and demolition and then do the other part. But that's a viable way of handling that. I just think that there are a lot of other ways to look at the diversity of our town, and other ways to look at how we can go about the change of our schools. Yes, do we need a new school? Absolutely, no question. No question. We need more space, we need more modernized space, we need more computerized ability, we need all of this. Of course, with wireless, we don't have to put in too much infrastructure sometimes with wireless now. So anyway, what I'm looking at is we've got current physical resources. This is a current physical resource we're sitting in. We can make this current physical resource better. What we have to do is be wise with our finances. We have to be wise in how we do it and how we look at it and how we change it. And I do appreciate y'all letting me speak tonight, and I think that we just really need to take a real peek at this, and I think there have been a lot of people who've said, search inside before you make this vote.
You had lots of questions in there, and I should have been writing down. And the one, yeah, we're actually 5 minutes past, but with one more hand, I don't want to cut it off. But on the cost, of course, we know that these are all, and I think we can tell the city to know that estimates are just that, estimates. And when you start to, they still don't know exactly the cost of the public safety complex, and they're way further along than we are because you don't know until you get your cost back. But you know, what, and Dr. Kimmel, correct me if I'm wrong, but after the meeting the other night, the architect, in looking at the cost of remodeling versus the cost of building new, we asked him to share with us his research on that, or his numbers, sort of what, and we wanted to make sure that we were not leaving things out like, well, there's nothing we can do about the classroom sizes in the third grade wing. You know, that's on a second floor that can't be anything but third grade or above. So somebody's going to have to be in those small classrooms if we were to stay here. But we asked him to, let's enclose that hallway so they're not walking outside at least. Let's put elevators in. Let's bring this campus up to as close to a level as a new campus as we could get if we were going to build new. And then what would it cost to do that? The cost, his estimate of that was what Dr. Kimmel referenced, being close to the cost, basically right at the cost of being a new construction. The estimate that we referenced the other night was a very early reference where they were just basically patching. You know, they did a lot, but it wasn't enclosing that hallway. We still had to go out. You know, still had to go outside to the bathroom. There were a lot of things that that were not included in that original. So that's a good question. I'm glad you brought it up because I can see where the question would be there. Some of the others that you brought up, you know, splitting grades out, like it would be great to be able to have pre-K through 2 in its own building, you know, somewhere. But you have to have you know, there's a lot of overhead, there's a lot of costs there that you have to cover with local money that we don't have. And so there's efficiencies to being all together, and there's also drawbacks, to being all together. And so, that's sort of, a lot of times it's multiple factors, including cost, and then a lot of, ADA accessible things that would have to be done to other facilities to make them up to code where we could house children in there, and be legal with it. So there's lots of things that I found as a businessman when you come into the education world that sound like it's a no-brainer, but when you get in, there's a lot of variables that you really have to sort of, consider. So I'm not sure that helps, but I did want to, that's two I can remember.
Well, thank you for responding, I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. All right, we are close to 10 minutes past, but I'm going to let's take one more.
Okay. I agree with my neighbor here about the streets, number one. Number two, if you drive either one of those streets, they're 25 miles an hour, right? If you drive 25 miles an hour, you get run off the road. So that's a safety problem for grade school kids, all right? The other problem I have is all the woods that's gonna be behind that school. I had 5 kids, and I've lived in this city over 35 years, and kids are curious. If you don't cut almost 65 acres of woods out behind that school, those kids will wander off. And don't tell me they won't. I've seen it done. Number two, the log jam you got here with traffic coming in and out, I brought 2 of my grandchildren here all the way through school. Picking them up and dropping them off, either my wife or I. We never had a problem with a log jam here. And number 3, that new school is too close to the high school. I've never lived in a city or visited a city that had a high school and a grade school next to each other. That causes lots of problems for the little kids. Plus, you got the jail not too far down the road. And if one guy gets out of there and it happens. A mistake is made and a guy is left out. There's lots of woods to hide in. That's all I've got to say. I don't think we should move down there. I understand this young lady that teaches here, or she's not. Yeah, you too. These pods are not the greatest thing in the world, but if that building over here needs to be demolished, demolish it and build a new one. There's plenty of things you can do without taking another thing south of the city. The thing I loved about moving to this city, was Central at one time. Now we're moving everything south. What do you want to do? Annex Weaver next? That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Mark?
You may hate me for saying this, but I've just got a question about 9B with the recommendation from the superintendent to discuss long-term development and planning on there. And with all that's been brought up today, and I know y'all been studying this for 2 years, and I know exactly what you're going through from what we've gone through on past experiences and decisions. And I appreciate the time you put into it, and you may be prepared to vote today. But I think there's been a lot brought out, and in this 9B, I would just like for you to consider the possibility, what's a month of delaying this decision, of making sure that you make what is the best decision, and I know you're going to do that, of putting together this committee and just getting another perspective before you take your final vote. And like I say, you may not like me for saying that, but
Makes sense.
Absolutely. We've been meeting with you and the mayor and Jerry, as well as JSU, for the last year and a half, and we've discussed this several times. So what more, we've discussed several things. So if we delayed it a month, what are you proposing?
Well, and we have discussed it, and we've had some
very good discussions with it, but this just looks like a different committee that would all be together at one time and just have a different perspective. I'm not saying that it would change your mind or it needs to change your mind, but you're making a decision that, and of course we went through the same thing, that you've got a lot of opposition to, and some points have been made, and do you really want to take the vote today, or do you want to just re-examine a lot of things that are brought up? That's just the point I was making, and I was just looking at 9B to say that.
Michael, if I may, just for a second, you know, this $2 to $3 million sticks in my head, and I understand what the architect said, but I understand what you all said because of what you understood to start out with, and then when you asked the question, the architect said, no, it's pretty much equal. And that bothers me to hear that, in the fact that I want to know, maybe from an outside source, as to where that $2 to $3 million comes when you're starting to, you know, the idea that I had was that if you did Kiddystone, it would be up to Spunk. It would be where it needed to be. If you do the school at the high school, out at the high school side setting, it would be up to Spunk. Either one would be where it was, and there was $2 to $3 million difference. And then all of a sudden, it's not there, and that's troublesome. I too would echo what Mark said about, you know, let's take a look at this a little bit further. Another month, another 2 months, something to look at, check it all out. I understand that you've and been there, done that. Checked it all out, done everything we could do. Let's look at it some more. Let's just see where it is, and you'll have better alliance possibly if you do that, because there are a lot of people who still have a lot of questions. And I know you're not here to make friends. You're here to do the things for the school, and that's a fact. But, and that's a big but, it's almost my size.
Thank you. Okay, we've gone past time with the comments, and I appreciate all the input. And so, as I said earlier, I'm actually not keeping my word because I went past 30 minutes, so we're past. There have been some comments made. I'll ask the board, each member, are you ready to vote? Are you ready to vote tonight on this issue based on what's on the agenda?
I am.
Yes. Ready to vote? Okay, everybody's ready to vote tonight as we planned. Okay. So we need to move to the next agenda item, which is superintendent's report for new business.
On item A, I would make a recommendation of the location for the new construction of Kiddystone Elementary to be on the new campus on George Hopkins and George Douthit and James Hopkins. I make that in the form of a recommendation.
Okay, we have a recommendation. I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Normally this time we have discussion of general board. I'm going to allow each board member time to sort of say what's on your mind or sort of before we vote. And so, David, we'll start with you.
First thing that I wanted to say, I know I wanted to express how fortunate we are as a community to have the citizens and the city that we have that is supporting us right now. And JSU, this is probably, since I've been here, there is more synergy between those three entities than there's ever been. And I think we're really fixed on the location tonight, but when you step back, when's the last time that we were getting ready to make a decision to build a new elementary school? So that decision in and of itself is incredible, and I'm very excited that regardless of the vote, we're going to have a new elementary school. And that's very exciting for me. I have a child who's in 8th grade at the high school and one that's in 6th grade at Kiddystone. I am a Kiddystone graduate. I went to Kiddystone. I'm a Jacksonville High School graduate. Every day I drive from the far northeast corner over to the high school, and I drive by what used to be the high school. on JSU's campus. And, you know, there is nostalgia there, and there is a sense of loss for that structure being there. Having gone to school there, I will tell you that there were not all good things about it being there. I mean, we remember the good things, and that's great that we all remember the good, but I remember it's awesome to play baseball on Jacksonville State's baseball field, but at the same time, when were you going to practice? We were practicing in a pasture, okay? Those kinds of things were happening, and I think that there's good and bad to all of these decisions. When I drive by there now, the parking lot is full of college students. Where would they have parked if we had been there? JSU's grown tremendously in the last 30 years. Time's going to move. It's going to move forward regardless of whether we want it to or not. And I'm all a fan for keeping our history and remembering our history. The thing that I remember when I think back to those days is the people. I can't tell you what the building looked like on the inside, but I can tell you who my classmates were, who my teachers were, who my coaches were. And that's the thing, why I moved to this town. It's the people that are here, and I think that's what sets us apart. I've lived in California, Minnesota, Texas, North Carolina, and we had a child, and it was time to raise a family, and this is where I chose to go because I felt like that it was the best place in the United States to raise a child. And my wife is from Florida, and now she feels that way. And I think that, you know, sometimes we forget, we're worried about the buildings, and it's the people here that are the most important thing. We have, the reason that I feel like I want to go ahead with the vote is that we have agonized over this. We have spent numerous hours. I mean, the reason we can't tell you how many hours is we have no clue. We have stayed up late at night. We have done our research. We have done our due diligence. And we feel like that anything, obviously we're hearing new things every single minute of every day the last 2 days, and we're trying to address each one of them. So there's been a lot of thought that's gone into the decision. One of the things that kind of tipped me was when I visited other schools. But if you think about it, how often do you go to a different school? You don't really, unless that's your profession. And when I visited other schools, it became clear to me that Keystone needs to be addressed. That's really not a location issue, except from the standpoint of one of the schools we visited had partial new, grades 10 through 12, and 9th grade was a renovated building. And it was just a contrast. It was an incredible difference between the two as far as even teachers talking about morale for that grade level. Finally, one of the things that stood out to me in the last week is I believe in my heart that there is a strong commitment between JSU, Jacksonville School Board, and the city to do something with this property. This property is not going to be abandoned. This property is not going to fall to disrepair. There is a strong commitment to do something here on this property. And, you know, I think that based on the information that we have, the more I learned, the more it became clear. The teacher's talking about 70%. If you ask me an insurance question, I'm going to give you a great answer. And when we ask the teachers a teacher question, they give us a great answer. And I think we have to rely on the staff that we have here, Dr. Campbell's experience at Etowah County. He has done a tremendous amount of work with new construction. I mean, I don't know if you know how many schools Etowah County has built in the last few years, but there's been a ton of construction there. If you read the first three things that we said was high expectations, high standards, high achievers. I don't want us to do anything average. And I feel like renovating this campus would be an average decision. And that's really what I've got to say about the location.
Thank you. Steve?
I've been where the people that are filled with passion tonight, I've been there with you. About 2007, I wanted my kids to just be outdoors more, but, I elicited help, and it became a campaign for me just as a parent, but the more I got into it, the more I understood the way it was and how we could make it better. And I also, somebody said, well, all the other, she came from the poorest outside of town. She said, Steve, you may not get recess because we don't have a breakfast program, and we're like 50% reduced lunches, so you can start out passionate at something and then discover you can make something else better. And once I got on the board, they asked what I wanted to do, if I could have anything, and I said a breakfast program for the school. And, I think we're close to 60% free and reduced lunch now, something like that. But we've had a breakfast program for about 3 years, and it was so easy, once, so I didn't even realize that as, one of the guys that lives up in the Northeast. I had no idea about, a breakfast program, but, the funding was already there, and then I worked with, I would just talk with Miss Hamilton about some of the other concerns about the outdoor play and stuff, and I understand she's made it better, I mean, I've fielded a couple of times in these forums, they've mentioned recess, and I've figured that was, kind of directed at me and some of my history. So, but you can take that passion and you can still make something good out of it, and we can all, push the wagon the same way. Now, and some of y'all know that I'm a nurse, and I've worked in historic hospitals, which means tiny little rooms, and they're laid out poorly, and it really makes a nurse's job a lot harder to provide patient care. Whether it's 500 yards from the recovery room all the way down these long, from the operating room all the way. I mean, you can't turn over a room and get to your next case because you're actually marching 500 yards. But I'm working in a brand new hospital now with all brand new equipment, and it makes it so much easier, and I know it would make it so much easier for our teachers to just teach better, and they can be safer. And, I'm just glad we're doing something about this because, but once you get on the board, you don't really want to advertise what's wrong with our schools, but somebody close to us, a professional like my wife, heard about our reputation in Jacksonville for education, and he toured. Him and his wife toured. They had little kids, same age as my kids, which aren't little now, but next thing we know, he's resigning, and they're all in Marietta. And I know it's because of our dilapidated elementary campus. But you can make something good. I mean, if we still have a sentiment and we want to put a middle school here, that could be the good thing that comes out of this, and to use your passion to do that. I mean, we opposed, I had concerns about the public safety complex, but guess what? They compromised. They said they're going to make the access road on the other side of Walmart. They said that they're going to keep City Hall, more central. So that's a compromise out of that. And so I feel like that we can get a good compromise out of this too. But that's really all I have to say, Mike.
Thank you. Dr. Sim?
Mr. Williams, you mentioned about crystal ball. I too cannot see the future. I don't know what it holds, but one thing I do know is that the future is full of change. I also know that one of the things that kids or students are going to need, that is part of our education and students in general, is they're going to need to have collaborative skills. They're going to need to communicate, critical thinking, creativity. This is all part of the 21st century learner. Personally, I believe that the new location will foster that much better than renovating where we are right now. As a current educator, not just educator, but educator of pre-service teachers. So I educate teachers who are going to be teachers. I totally understand very intimately the need and importance of a safe and nurturing learning environment. I know that. As a parent, I'm so grateful for Jacksonville City Schools and the fact that it places such a premium on quality academic education. As your board member, I know that I'm charged with doing what's best for our school system and its students, and I'm so humbled by the responsibility and trust that's put in me for decisions like today and here on out. But I do want you to know my decision tonight, my individual, let that be clear, decisions tonight, I took in many facets, many emails I received from you on a personal basis, many anecdotal conversations I had with people in the community that the public may or may not be aware of, talking about the hours. I couldn't count them because I lost sleep from this, literally lost sleep. That's how passionate I am about education. I am passionate about this community, but I'm more passionate about the students we educate in this community. And my hope today, after we leave here today, or we go on among our lives, is that we come together and support this decision and for the benefit of our students, for our students can see, here's what happens when we work together and collaborate. And look at creativity. You have to be creative about some of these issues that we're facing today. This is what we need to do. I love this place. I was the educator here in the Jacksonville City School System. I'm now at JSU. I eat, breathe, and think education. My husband can tell you I'm sitting there watching a commercial on TV and I'm finding a way, how can I bring this into my classroom? And this is what I do when I go to lots of different schools. And I see the difference of environment makes. It makes a difference. Ultimately, all the research will show you that what will impact students more than anything else is a quality, effective teacher. But you cannot dismiss the fact that a healthy, safe, nurturing learning environment makes a difference, because it does.
Thank you. Kelly?
Well, I kind of echo a lot that has been said. I chose to come to Jacksonville. I didn't grow up here. When my kids were of age to go to school, I toured around the area, and I chose Jacksonville for the school system. I had one start in the 5th grade and one start in kindergarten. So both of them went through, and I live on the north end. I never thought about the drive, and I've heard that a lot, I guess, but I never, didn't think a lot about it, because I'd always been on the north end, so I drove to Keystone or I drove to the high school. And as a parent at that time, I wanted to have the best education I could for my child, and I felt like I did at Keystone and then at the high school. And also the teachers. And I was amazed when I came to Keystone, the setup, because I came from my oldest child came from a very small school where everything was kind of laid out, and I came there to Keystone and was surprised at the layout. But the teachers, you get in those rooms and your kid comes home and they talk about those teachers and what they were doing in the classrooms, I knew I'd made the right decision. A second, Emily had done it, is when I ran for the board, I wanted to do something. I wanted to give back. I wanted to serve, as we talked about today. Serve. And as a board member, our mission is to serve our children. And we've had some great comments and great concerns that were brought up tonight, and I admire and I thank you for your passion and commitment. But in my opinion, a lot of that is not something I have a charge to do. I think as a board member, my charge is to try to make decisions based on what's the best interest of my children. When I mean my children, I mean the children of Jacksonville City Schools. In the future, nobody knows what holds the future, so we hope the decisions we make, we're making the best decision at this point in time. I have to look at the generations that are out there today. I have to look at the future, but I also have to look at those little kids that marched in here and marched out. I, in good conscience, can put them in a portable trailer for nothing, for anything. I can't ask those teachers to go in those classrooms, into that portable with 20, can you imagine 20 kids in that portable classroom with a teacher and say, I want you to teach. I want you to do. I want you to meet your curriculum. I want you to meet your scores. I want you to do all these things that we're asking you to do. By the way, I hope you can get to that safe place if a tornado goes off. And I'm saying that as a board member, so I feel it wasn't made. Someone said, oh, you already made up your mind. You already made up your mind. Tonight I did have my mind made up, but I didn't make it up yesterday. It's been 2 years of us having meetings. We met with several different architects. It wasn't just one, several. Several different architects gave us plan after plan, cost after cost, opinions after opinion, engineers, construction, other people. I mean, so many facets so that we could make the best educated decision we could. And this went on and on. Public meetings, somebody said, well, why did you ask everybody? We can't possibly ask. At some point, we have to ask the community, if you want to know, you've got to get involved. You've got to come. Let's meet each other halfway. You know, we're going to get you that information out there, but you've got to be also proactive to come get that information. So do I think we asked everybody? Yeah, I do. In the fact that it's been on the website. We've had we've had several different meetings. We meet here once a month, and we have for I don't know how many years. So when people say, oh, we didn't know, I don't understand how you don't know. That's where I think that's kind of like you tell your kid, well, you better know, you know, kind of like that. So again, it goes back to me to that of what my charge is as a board member, and that's to protect that kid at every single cost. And next to that kid is that faculty member that stands there, and every time that child walks from one pod, from that pod to the office, they're hoping and praying that kid gets to that office okay. Or that kid that doesn't have a coat when they come in and they've got to stand outside to go to the bathroom. They don't have a coat. You know, that teacher's there to help them with that coat or to get them into that point of safety. Those were the biggest concerns for me. That is what I looked at. Not just yesterday or the day before, but every single day. And those are the thoughts that ran through my head when the architects sit up here. When we're traveling and looking at all those other different schools that the different architects showed us. Every study, the teachers survey, 70% said, please let us move. And let me tell you, we got great teachers. If we said, Miss Wilson, I need you to go stand in that portable trailer, she would go in there and she'd do a bang up job. I don't want my child in a trailer. I don't want your child in a trailer. So this is my thought process. This is what I'm trying to let you just see how my thought process, nobody else, which is crazy. But this is my thought process. So at the end of the day, when I went to bed tonight, you may not agree with how I vote, but I can guarantee you that I'm 100% confident in my vote that it is for the best interest of these children. And second, those teachers and faculties that come in each and every day, that stand out in the cold. I can go on and I'm going to stop here, but I'm going to say thank you. And I hope when this is over that we all rally together, because I know I don't always get what I want in a lot of decisions, but as a community, and if we love this community, we truly do, then we leave here today and say, okay, you know, how are we going to move forward? How are we going to help each other? Okay. Sorry.
Thank you, Dr. King. Did you?
You go ahead, and then I'll.
Okay, I know y'all. Thanks for your patience, and I think it's important for we've been a sponge for a long time, and I think it's important for you to hear, you know, what's on the board members' hearts. And not many people know this. I'm an emotional guy, especially when I talk about my kids or people's kids, and I see teachers in the back of the room. But this is a situation where we've had to sort of do the hard thing and remove emotion from a lot of the decision process, because I know that there's a lot here, and that translates into passion, which I think is what's beautiful about our community. You know, I say this almost every time to start when I talk to a group of people, whether it's teachers or community members, the city council. It truly is, and I say this from my heart, an honor to serve on this board. And you know, I put probably crazy amounts of time into it that you know, I'm only because I want to. There is a return on that investment. It's, you know, I spend time away from my kids' basketball games, from my work, from my family. But they know what I'm doing, and hopefully it's for the greater good, you know, in our community. You know, I'm a dad. We're dads and moms just like you are. We're citizens of Jacksonville just like you are. I have sat in the seats of and stood by a lot of you who totally disagree with me and oppose me, and I empathize with you because I've been there. I've been there in the city council chambers. I've been there in the Board of Education meeting as a parent before I was on the Board of Education. And so I'm with you. But you know, if there's and like the board members have said, we have received numerous phone calls, emails, talked in restaurants, gotten feedback in church, as well as reviewed all the data. So what I want to say is kind of what was said earlier, and I already had planned to say this, and so I'll just reiterate it. regardless of the outcome of this vote, and I think from hearing all of us talk, you think, obviously, you know where it's probably going to go, at least in my observation. And tonight is the first time I've heard any of this from these board members. We have independently researched this and thought about this, which is what we are charged to do by the State of Alabama School Board Association. And what I can tell you is that regardless of the outcome, we must, as a community, it is vital for us to come together and put aside differences at this point going forward, and work together, because our support of these students is not conditional upon the location of a building or how much money something's going to cost or how wide a road is. Our support for these students should be 100% regardless of where this location is, or where the streets are, or how wide they are. Certainly, these are all things we have to take into consideration, and we can work together to make that better. I feel like that the architect's recommendation at this latest work session, after looking at the whole situation of building a new elementary school across from the high school and having what I like to call a 5-year plan to repurpose Kiddystone into a middle school, to me, overcame a lot of the objections and a lot of the concerns that we heard, and a lot of the feedback from those who wanted to keep the campus here. It keeps a school in town. We have a more manageable population of students on campus that we can educate. It eliminates the need for even spending money on portables or trying to figure out should we put them behind or in front, because there would be no need for portables. We would safely move the children to one campus, repurpose this campus, and then at appropriate time bring those children back onto this campus, which relieves a lot of the traffic congestion. So I am very hopeful and optimistic that we as a community, the Board of Education, the City of Jacksonville, JSU, and my conversations as early as this morning with Dr. Meehan, as he said, Mike, we're going to support the Board of Education in whatever you decide to do. And he said, we're here for you, which is unbelievable. This is their property. That they could say, well, this under this condition or that condition, but they're 100% supportive, which means so much. So I know I'm rambling, but we have been through a 2-year process, gather information. We must channel our energy for these kids after this decision, and it's time to make a decision and move forward, in my opinion. So thank you so much for enduring. Thank you for being here tonight. And I think Dr. Campbell wanted to say a few things before we move forward.
Yeah, I appreciate the fact that so many of you are passionate about the schools in Jacksonville. And I just want you to know that, like Kelly said, the recommendation that I made tonight was not preconceived recently. It was developed over a period of years. And I was still calling people that I know and trust that have been mentors to me today to just go back over the details again. Am I missing something? I was lucky enough to be in a position while a system was going through some massive construction projects. Jared's dad was one of my mentors. I worked for him for several years, and he was in that position. I learned from him. I learned from Mike Bailey that followed him, and then I was in that position. And so I didn't make the recommendation tonight based on anything else other than the experiences and the information that we had tonight. And the litmus test that I used in making that recommendation, my wife's a career educator. She's in year 29 of teaching. She spent 2 years in a portable. We went through that in a construction project, but it was a high school. It was a different situation, different, and what I'm doing, I'm putting myself in a position of, would I put my wife in a situation? Would I put my children in a particular situation if I had options? And I weighed out the options. And that is why I made the recommendation that I did. Not because I think I'm 100% right and I have all the answers, but based on the information that I had and the experiences that I had, I made that recommendation. And I just want to let everybody know that I respect everything that was said. I think there were some very, very strong points made, and that leads me into my next recommendation, which would be if the board would authorize me to create a committee.
Do we need to vote on the first?
Oh, did you not?
We haven't voted officially.
Go ahead.
We've been discussing a long time, and I apologize for that. Okay, so We have a recommendation, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay. Then the next recommendation would be to authorize me to create a committee consisting of representatives from the city council, the school system, and Jacksonville State to discuss repurposing and future long-term development of this campus, to develop a plan that when funds are available, we will be able to move forward with repurposing this campus.
Okay.
Make that a form of recommendation.
Okay, we have this recommendation, and again, you know, what we have, what's been recommended us by the architect is to repurpose this campus into a middle school. And what we want to do is work with all the stakeholders, and we've sort of already been in some discussions with the city council, JSU, and Board of Education, and also the community members, to make that a reality. And this community has had on its wish list for 40 years in middle school, and I think that we can work together to make that happen and overcome a lot of the concerns about the of this campus. So we have a recommendation. I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
A motion is second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Next is personnel. We only have one personnel item, and regretfully, make a recommendation to approve the resignation of Dr. Billy Jenkins. He was assistant principal at Kittystone, and he has accepted a full-time position at Gadsden State Community College. And just want to say that Dr. Jenkins was a tremendous asset for the time that he was here, and it's with deep regret I make that recommendation.
Yeah, with regret, we have a recommendation. I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is confirm the day of the next board meeting.
I think it would be the 17th.
The regular date will be February 17th, and we've been doing that at 4 because of basketball games. Is that still, that's the regional tournament. Hopefully we're going to be in the regional tournament. I already got it on our calendar.
It wouldn't be on that day?
It don't start till Tuesday.
Okay, okay, all right. So is the 17th good, everybody? Is 4 o'clock the best time? Do we want to do that 4 or 5, or do y'all have a preference?
4 is fine.
Okay.
I'll
So,
ask my boss if 4 is okay.
all right, so February 17th, 4 o'clock. All right, any board member thoughts or concerns you'd like to bring before the board? Okay, hearing none, I want to thank everybody again for being here and for your patience. This has been an experience. This is not what I'm trying to do professionally, so I rely on a lot of people around me, and as do these folks. We really appreciate the citizens, the city, JSU, and the parents and the teachers and the students, and for the cake and all out there tonight too. So thank you for being here. And if there are no other announcements,
Got announcements. Next Tuesday night at 6 p.m. at the high school cafeteria, we are offering a session we're calling Social Media 101. And it's for parents and any adults that are interested in learning more about social media and digital citizenship, which are very, very important topics in today's society. We've got guest speakers coming. I've got Mo Kennedy, who is the executive director of the National School Resource Officer Organization, that's coming in. He was my college roommate, so I twisted his arm, but he's a wonderful speaker. Unfortunately, anytime there is a major school crisis anywhere in the country, you usually see him on CNN or Fox News as an expert on school issues. So he's going to be with us, as well as Vincent Houston from JSU. He's the Vice President for Information Technology. And then maybe the biggest VIP is Anthony Kingston, because he's almost 6'6". But Anthony, and then Bridget Stewart, who works with our teachers every day. We've got I think it's going to be a very good program. I think it's going to be a start, because I think what we're going to find out is that we need to have more programs like that to help keep the parents informed and educated on things they can do to help protect the kids from themselves as they're learning their way.
And the date again?
The 28th at 6 p.m. Next Tuesday, at a week from tonight at 6 p.m. at the high school. And it's free.
And if you've got teenage kids, you know that there needs to be some training in social media and the dangers. Okay, any other announcements? Okay, hearing none, I need a motion to adjourn. A motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.